First one here is UC Merced achieved R1 status recently, which is basically kind of like a designation as a research university. What does it mean for undergraduate students? Will its ranking go up in the UCs? I think we've already kind of seen the effects of it. Just going up from like 2023 to 2024, for example, Merced's already shot up to, I think it's ranked like 58th already. And that was already most likely factoring in the fact that it's already gotten that designation or would have gotten that designation. Another thing to note too is that I think there's also a massive increase in the number of applications to UC Merced just last fall. I think it went up by like 57%. So the acceptance rate is projected to drop down significantly. So Merced used to have like something like a 90 something percent acceptance rate, right? It's projected to be somewhere like 60 or 70% this year. So we can already see effects of Merced becoming even more competitive. So it just goes to show how strong the entire UC system is and how overall over the coming years it's going to continue to get more and more impressive. Okay. Next is if my family doesn't qualify for financial aid due to overly high annual income, but I still want a scholarship to afford private college, should I still submit the FAFSA? How can I signal my scholarship need to the college, as this has influenced my decision about applying early decision? Um, Scholarship need, that's kind of a tricky thing because obviously they'll use the income level as the actual determinant of need. But if you do as a family want to prioritize maybe getting scholarships, then a couple of things. One is that most colleges will have some sort of earlier deadline that you need to meet in order to be eligible for the scholarships. Most will just consider you just based on the virtues of your application itself, right? They'll take a look at your grades and test scores, maybe if you're really well performing in terms of certain activities or impact to your community. Those are all things that they factor in when considering you for one of their merit scholarships. As far as other types of scholarships, obviously you can look into like be it athletic scholarships or based on activities, that could be a possibility as well. Some schools will have separate deadlines and or separate essays or application procedures to be eligible for their scholarships. But overall, if you're not quite technically eligible, one of the ways to maybe enhance your chances of getting a scholarship is maybe even look at schools that are less competitive or less highly ranked than you would normally be competitive for, right? Because schools that maybe are in your likely or safety range are more apt to go ahead and consider you for merit scholarships because they kind of want to recruit you, right? So it's those tough, really hard to get into schools that probably won't necessarily have an incentive to give you any sort of like scholarship. The other thing too is that like I wouldn't necessarily presume that just because your family has a high income that you may not be eligible for any sort of merit aid. So every single college out there is mandated by federal law to have what's called a net price calculator or a financial aid calculator on their website. So it makes a lot of sense for you to just calculate that and see whether or not you might actually be eligible for some aid. So that would be a first step that I would take a look at before you maybe just assume that you may not get any sort of aid whatsoever. Okay. Next is the Congressional Award, more prestigious than the Presidential Volunteer Service Award. It appears that a lot of students have PBS Gold Awards. That looks pretty common. Now, I will preface it by saying colleges don't really look at those awards in a vacuum and say like, oh, this person has congressional or PBSA. They're really looking at what you did for service. So the PBSA or the Congressional Award are basically just a kind of a cherry on top to highlight the fact that you're very active in terms of community service. The admissions people I know aren't necessarily that easily swayed by these awards anyway, right? So just focus on the totality of what you're doing instead of like looking at just the hour counts. Obviously, if you volunteer a lot at a certain place, you will forge relationships. You'll show more active involvement in whatever causes you happen to be working in. I would say even above those two anyway, you'd want to focus maybe getting a strong recommendation letter for someone who's involved with the volunteer work that you do. That's going to matter more in addition to just like obviously seeing that you've been constantly involved based on your activities list. So as opposed to the two, then, I mean, I suppose congressional award might be a little bit less commonly applied to, and the bar is higher for like the gold level based on the total number of hours. It's not a 12-month thing. I think it's a cumulative thing for how many hours you've done in total. So I think that might be harder to get in terms of the total level to be able to get gold. But keep in mind the congressional award can also have different criteria. It's not a purely volunteer award. Things like personal fitness are included there. So, you know, in a vacuum, I guess PVSA would be a little bit more concentrated towards volunteer hours, I would say. Okay. Next, among the top 50 schools, is the UC the only school that requires an art course in high school for admission? Yeah, I believe so. I believe so. Like, I've never really checked to see for an art requirement for other schools, but obviously, like, if you are applying to the UCs, that obviously would check off the box for everything else. Very few of our students just choose not to apply to the UC system overall, even if they don't live in California. But yes, the UCs do have a 1 year requirement of the same type of art. So you can't mix and match, let's say, for instance, painting class with a dance class. It has to be 1 full year of the same art class to be eligible for the UC requirements. Okay. Next is for someone who loves playing the piano, but not going to have it as a major, what level of piano competition award would be helpful? Regional, national, or international? Does the MTech CM Panel Award, so that's the California Teachers Certificate of Merit Award, panel honor help? Sure, if you can get that high, that would certainly be something that would look good in terms of the activities. Obviously, when you said regional, national, or national for competitions, it depends on your level, right? So obviously, the more competitive you can be, national or international, the better, the more impactful that is. It's not like there's a tier that you need to reach for it to be helpful whatsoever. Okay, but I would say like, if you are doing the competition level, that could be something too that would set you apart from other applicants, much like any other activity. Because a lot of people do have piano as an activity, I'll be honest. Okay. So if you have like, certificate of merit level 10, but you don't do anything with it, that's probably not going to move the needle just because a lot of people have that. But yes, being involved in competitions, distinguishing yourself, winning musical awards could show colleges that, you do have talent. So even if you're not going to be a music major per se, who knows? You could be very involved in school activities that require maybe some talent in piano. So I think that could have some value there. Okay, next is my son is doing ASB for 3 years in school as one of his periods, so he's taking less APs than his classmates. His ranking is not very top based on weighted GPA, but his unweighted is 4.0. Will this negatively impact his application? No. Okay, so being an ASB and having that required leadership class is not necessarily going to be, a downgrade. Obviously, like the fact that, your son is in leadership is going to make him look pretty good, right? In and of itself, colleges are aware of that. So they don't look at a weighted GPA in a vacuum. They look at the totality of your transcript and what you took, right? So no admissions person I know would say that, oh, leadership is less valuable than an AP because they understand that leadership is a good commodity for them to have as well, right? So like I said, don't think of a GPA in a pure vacuum as higher is always better. They evaluate things holistically and see what impact you could make in terms of the overall like community for the schools. So if you are a very active person in leadership for your school, they put a lot of premium on that as well in terms of you doing the same thing at their university. Okay. Next is what should I do if the colleges such as UIUC does not meet my SAI needs? Okay. Well, if you're gapped, that's, if they don't meet necessarily the financial aid that was dictated by what do you call this, the federal formula for the FAFSA, one, you should probably just contact the admissions office direct or the financial aid office directly, right? So they could make accommodations. You could make your case for why you feel like the determination doesn't fit, right? So usually if you talk to someone on the phone, that could probably get you to work on it. You could also basically, if this is around like April already and you're already kind of like making decisions between colleges, you could talk to them and say like, hey, you know what? I have this financial aid offer from one of your competitor schools, right? From one of your peer institutions, and they're offering me this. Is there any way you can match? Sometimes they will, depending on how much budget they have in terms of the financial aid budget. Okay. Next is if a student is admitted ED to a university, does the student still have a chance to apply to other universities? No. Unfortunately, that's what the ED agreement says, right? So you will basically, if you got accepted for ED, that's it, right? So you are committed to go, right? You're supposed to sign an ED agreement that basically tells you the rules that once you are accepted, you will hopefully honor that agreement to go, right? So I mean, technically, that doesn't stop you from applying to other colleges, but that's just, no, I wouldn't do that. Okay. Because you can't go there anyway, even if they accept you, right? Next is how many merit scholarships are usually awarded in UC Berkeley each year? I don't know if they actually publicize how many they have. They don't really have a ton of merit scholarships. I know the Regent Scholarship is some form of a merit scholarship, but usually that is tied to financial need. So it's like a sliding scale. They have a base amount, and the bigger amounts are for people who do have demonstrated financial need. So it's not like huge amounts anyway. But yeah, I haven't seen anything that would publicize exactly how many they have. Okay. Next is if a student is admitted ED. Oh no, I already answered that question. Right? Can he or she apply to other universities? I mean, if the application was already in there, but like usually the protocol that school counselors will tell you is that you're supposed to withdraw your application to other schools if you got accepted to your school for ED. Okay, next is my son has activities from both political science and STEM. Is applying into political science a better chance for top Ivies for Asian boys? He does not have prestigious STEM awards, only robotics? Possibly, but keep in mind that most top UCs like Harvard and Princeton don't really make decisions based on your major, right? Although, having said that, you're going to want to look at your profile and see which ones you project as stronger in terms of your activities, right? Because keep in mind, for a place like Harvard or Princeton, it's pretty easy to change majors anyway. So if you have stronger evidence for political science, it actually makes more sense for you to apply there and then maybe just change, right? Usually restrictions in terms of changing majors isn't as pronounced of a situation as, let's say, for example, if you're applying to a UC or many other public universities where STEM majors are often gated, especially for engineering. If it's like political science to bio or chem, that's not even an issue because most bio and chem programs are housed in the College of Arts and Sciences along with political science. So changing majors is not a big deal. Okay. All right. Let's see. What is my opinion of Rice University? The school is expanding its DEI under a different name. What is the culture there like? I mean, it's pretty solid overall. I don't necessarily know anything negative of it. I think overall, I mean, it's a smaller school relative to other schools. Pretty strong usually for STEM fields as well. So yeah, I mean, to be honest, nothing really stands out for me in terms of what I could say about Rice. It's a good school, good solid reputation. All right, next, are UC schools need blind or need aware? Does financial aid have any impact on my admissions decision to the UCs? No, it shouldn't, right? Yeah, so basically for the UCs, yeah, I'm pretty sure their financial aid and what do you call this, scholarships is separate from the UC readers. The UC readers will make those decisions in a vacuum without looking at your financial information.